Welcome back to another sermon preview this week, where we are going to actually be finishing our little kind of mini series on the topic of names, and we're going to close it out with a bang, with the big one, with God's name. But we're also going to be talking about other names in this story as well. It's really a beautifully fascinating and wonderful story that we find nestled at the beginning of Exodus in the first 3 chapters, where we see Moses come onto the scene, and the way that happens with the names of these 2 Hebrew midwives that we're going to talk about, Moses' name itself. We're going to talk about how how God reveals his name to Moses, rather. All this is just beautiful and fascinating and wonderful and crazy. And the Old Testament is just full of really interesting stories. Stories that can tell us and reveal so much about who God is. And God's name is right at the center of that, right? Remember, the overarching theme that we're looking at is God at the center. How does God reveal God's self to Moses in this story? What a really fascinating thing to look at. Why does God reveal God's self to Moses in this story? I mean, all these questions about this moment, this really, really interesting moment of Moses seeing a burning bush. I mean, what's happening there? Beautiful story. Amazing how this happens, why it happens. And of course, this is the launching point for kind of the story of the Old Testament. It is the story that defines who the Israelites are forever, even until now. The Passover meal comes from this story, right? The story of the Israelites being led out of Egypt. Just as the resurrection event, how that story defines who Christians are, right? Our whole identity is wrapped up in the story of the resurrection. So the Israelites, their whole story is wrapped up in this resurrection moment, how God brings them back to life, essentially, right? That they went down to Egypt in the time of Jacob, of Israel, that we looked at last week, and they have been left there for hundreds of years. And this is their resurrection moment, their coming out moment, where God takes them and does something amazing with them. And it starts with Moses, it starts with God's name, so that they can personally call on him and know who he is in a different way than they've known him before. And so there's intimacy here and connection and relationship and on and on and on. So many wonderful, wonderful things about this story. And so I'm looking forward to discussing that with you. I'm looking forward to really diving into what's happening here. Why is this such an impactful story for the Israelites? And what do we do with it, right? How does it affect who we are? All these things are really important. So read Exodus 1, 2, and 3. We're going to be kind of taking snapshots in those 3 chapters, but for those of you who decide to read, it'll give you that broader and better context for what we talk about on Sunday. And I'm just really looking forward to taking a look at this story with you. So read Exodus 1 through 3, come prepared. Get ready to dive into what God is doing in the story and why it's so important for them and for the Israelites, and then also for us even still today. All right, so I'm looking forward to getting into that with you, and I hope I get to see you on Sunday, that you'll be able to join us, and we'll catch up again next week as we talk about what will be coming that following Sunday. All right, have a great rest of the week, and I'll talk to you next week.